About 4 months ago, CS MGTOW, Niko, Choski, and evidently Stardust were involved in a conversation in which they joked about the zombie apocalypse meme, which they erroneously attributed to the manosphere, and they dismissed the possibility of a global economic collapse. At that time, I posted a response video, linked below, in which I identified the source of the meme and that it was being discussed as a probability, not as a certainty. Now, during the past 6 years or so, I wrote some articles in which I posited that an economic collapse, if it did happen, would in all probability put an end to the feminists' government programs that substitute for men and fathers. Since then, several in the manosphere, including MRAs and MGTOW, have echoed this. So perhaps this is where they got the idea that it originated with the manosphere. Regardless, I was both surprised and pleased today when I listened to MGTOW talks towards a universal income. Both Stardust and CS acknowledged that the global economy is in dire straits today. They also acknowledged something that many of us in the manosphere have been discussing for some time, the profound impact that automation will have on unemployment, and that the most effective means to mitigate this is with a universal basic income. During their conversation, they raised a number of issues which I would like to address here. First, how will governments pay for it? I've actually addressed that in a few earlier videos. Martin Armstrong's proposed solution will make it possible to eliminate all federal taxes. To massively oversimplify his proposal, you could think of it as decoupling the national currency, whatever it may be, dollars, pounds, marks, whatever, from debt and converting the currency into the federal equivalent of Bitcoin. There's much more to it than that, but every year the government simply issues the amount of currency necessary to fund the budget as a percentage of GDP, say 10%. Won't that lead to inflation? Armstrong says no and explains why in the Solution Conference video. You can find the Amazon standard ID for the DVD in the low bar. This is the direct product number and does not include my code, so I will not make anything on the sale if you buy it. I mailed copies of this DVD to Stefan Molyneux and Bern Chapin and provided information to Turd Flinging Monkey about it, which I just also sent to CS MGTOW today, with a request, and it was just a request, not an expectation, that they watch it and then explain why it can't work. Or if they can't do that, then to explain why they think it will work. My request to staff Bern and TFM included the caveat that I already know and understand the Austrian School of Economics objections, and Armstrong has already addressed those on his blog. So far, none of them have posted a video on the subject. We'll see. I'm not a true believer, and my challenge was like a call for papers on the subject. I am truly interested to see if anybody can tear it apart, because I don't like the proposal on principle. But I think it would work, and if it works, well, okay. So that's how a universal basic income could be funded. Not by taxes, but by simply issuing currency as a percentage of GDP. Stardust asked how men will compete if men and women are all getting the same basic income because hypergamy. How will they compete for women's attention? He suggested that this would lead to lots of violent confrontations with men fighting for female attention. CS referred to it as peacocking, which instantly brought to my mind fancy dancing. Fancy dancing is what you see at American Indian tribal powwows. Men and women get dressed up in fancy outfits and go out on the floor whirling and jumping and strutting around. Now, I'm not suggesting that all the guys will take up dancing, but that the removal of income as a means of sexual competition will lead to substitutes. Dancing, oratory, scholarship, science. There are many ways in which men might compete for the attention of women, but that presumes that men would want to. As Turd Flinging Monkey has mentioned many times, sex robots and virtual reality will reduce the demand for women. And Sandman frequently brings up the subject of artificial womb technology. Given the choice between dealing with the hypergamous demands of a woman or sinking into a hyper-realistic fantasy in which the sex is always mind-blowing and the company is always perfect, how many billions of men will choose the real thing over perfection? So it's more likely, it seems to me, that we will end up with turd-flinging monkeys' virtual male shortage, in which women will actually compete for the attention of men, rather than the other way around. Stardust also raised the specter of overpopulation. I realize this is very popular with leftists, but really, there is no overpopulation problem at all. There's a government problem. The technologies exist right now to feed everybody on the planet wholesome and nutritious organic food. And even better technologies are being developed right now. But even if this were not the case, overpopulation would still not be a problem because a decline in population is already baked into the cake as birth rates decline. Now, before I get to the final question they raised, I do want to note that they raised a very valid point, self-defense. They spoke about some commenters who asserted that each of us are responsible to defend ourselves from aggressors. Yes, well, I would agree each of us is ultimately responsible for our own protection. There is always somebody who's stronger, faster, and meaner than you. And if you eliminate laws, customs, whatever, and require everybody to rely solely on themselves and their family for defense, then you are inviting your own death, because eventually that stronger, faster, better equipped, and meaner thug will find and kill you. Now the final issue, unemployment. As automation eliminates more and more jobs, leaving more and more people unemployed, and all routine tasks can be automated, even if we support all of them with a universal basic income, what will they do? Well, some people, of course, will turn into blubberous lumps, or blumps as I think of them, sitting in front of a TV or plugged into the net or a virtual world munching on fattening foods as they make themselves a monument to sloth. But most people, especially after doing nothing for a while, will become restless and want to get active again. They will want to have fun. Hiking, skydiving, ziplining, scuba diving, that sort of a thing. But is that all we're destined for, is to have fun? As it happened, a few years ago, one of my best friends brought a book to my attention and urged me to read it. This one. Robert Heinlein. Let's see if we can get that nice focus here. For Us, the Living. Now, the story is about customs and such, but the key elements that my buddy Scott wanted me to look at, it had to do with universal basic income. Despite it, most characters in the story were employed. Read the book. It's also linked in the low bar with the Amazon ID. If you did not have to work for a living, what would you do? Have fun? Sure, but what hobbies would you pursue? I can think of dozens of productive activities I'd like to pursue if I didn't have to work for a living. What about you?